Marcus Vale pulled his weathered cloak tighter against the biting wind that swept across Zirion's endless dunes. The twin moons cast an eerie silver glow over the night bazaar, where desperate merchants hawked their wares to anyone brave enough to venture into the lawless trading post. His cargo hauler's engine still ticked with cooling metal as he surveyed the maze of stalls and hovering platforms that defied the planet's harsh gravity. He wasn't here for the usual suspects: stolen tech, black market weapons, or synthetic narcotics that could fry your brain in 7 different ways. Marcus dealt in something far more valuable and infinitely rarer: authentic spices from the old colonies. The kind that could make a meal taste like home for refugees scattered across a dozen star systems, or provide the key ingredients for medicines that kept hope alive in the Outer Rim. "Looking for something special tonight, trader?" The voice belonged to Vex Harding, rail-thin merchant, whose stall overflowed with crystalline containers that hummed with internal energy. His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Marcus, scanning for tells of desperation or wealth. "Zaranthian crystal peppers," Marcus replied, keeping his voice neutral. "Heard you might have some that survived the colony purge," Vex's grin revealed, teeth replaced with chrome implants. "Expensive taste, friend. Those little beauties are worth more than most people's starships these days." He gestured toward a locked quantum storage unit behind his main display. "But for a man with your reputation, I might make an exception." The haggling took 20 minutes, but Marcus finally transferred the credits that would leave him eating recycled protein bars for the next month. Vex activated the storage unit with a biometric scanner, the quantum field shimmering like water as it dissolved to reveal not spices. 2 women huddled in the cramped space, their skin shifting between deep purple and brilliant gold, like living prisms. The taller one wore a form-fitting suit that seemed to be made of liquid mercury, while her companion was draped in what appeared to be woven starlight. Both had eyes that held depths Marcus couldn't fathom, ancient and terrified in equal measure. "What the hell, Vex?" Marcus's hand instinctively moved toward the plasma pistol at his hip. "Easy, traitor." Vex raised his hands, but his expression had shifted from merchant to something far more dangerous. "Change of plans. These 2 lovelies are worth 100 times more than any spice. Genesis Corporation pays premium for exotic specimens." Taller woman spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. "Please, we mean no harm to anyone. Just want to be free." "Free." Vex laughed harshly. "Honey, freedom's the most expensive commodity in the galaxy. And you too just became my retirement fund." A low thrumming filled the air, the unmistakable sound of military-grade hover transports approaching fast. Marcus's traitor instincts screamed danger as spotlights began sweeping across the bazaar. Other merchants were already packing up, recognizing the signs of an impending raid. "Genesis Patrol," the shorter woman whispered, her skin cycling through shades of blue and silver in apparent distress.
"They found us."
"Looks like I won't even have to transport you myself," Vex said, reaching for a signal device that would summon the soldiers directly to his stall. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. His fist connected with Vex's jaw, sending the merchant sprawling into his own display of crystalline containers. The crash echoed across the bazaar as precious spices scattered like exotic snow. The women stared at him with expressions caught between hope and disbelief. "Can you run?" he asked them. The taller one nodded. "I am Nyx. This is my sister Solara. We have been running for longer than your species has traveled among the stars." "Then, keep running." Marcus grabbed his emergency kit from the hauler and tossed them each a hooded cloak from his cargo hold. "My ship's at landing pad 7. Move fast and stay quiet." As they slipped through the shadows between stalls, Marcus caught glimpses of Genesis soldiers in their distinctive black armor, their movements coordinated with military precision. Their weapons weren't the standard plasma rifles. These looked like they were designed to capture, not kill. Solara asked as they reached the edge of the bazaar, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus looked back at the chaos spreading through the night bazaar, at the soldiers who would turn every stone until they found what they were looking for. Because 30 years ago, my father told me that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is help someone. who can't help themselves. He just hoped they would all live long enough to find out if he'd made the right choice. Behind them, Vex's angry shouts, mixed with the bark of Genesis officers demanding answers. The hunt had begun, and Marcus's Vale, simple spice trader, had just become the galaxy's most wanted man. Marcus's cargo hauler Wandering Star shuddered as it broke through Zirion's atmosphere, leaving the night bazaar and its pursuing Genesis forces far below. In the cramped passenger compartment, Nyx and Solara sat in tense silence, their prismatic skin gradually shifting from the agitated purples and reds of fear to calmer blues and greens. "We're clear for now, Marcus," called from the pilot's seat. "But they'll have tracking beacons on every jump gate in the system. We need to find somewhere to lay low and figure out our next move." Nyx stood gracefully, her movements flowing like liquid mercury. "There is much you do not understand, Marcus Vale. We are not merely refugees fleeing persecution," she placed her hand against the ship's metal bulkhead. Marcus watched in fascination as her fingers seemed to merge with the surface. The metal began to shift and flow, reinforcing weak points and optimizing the hull's molecular structure. Within moments, his aging freighter had become significantly more durable. "Bioarchitecture," Solara explained, noticing his amazement. "We are among the last prism-born, created by our ancestors to tend to the living worlds we can reshape. Matter at the molecular level, coax life from barren rock, heal what has been poisoned. Or," Nyx's voice carried a note of bitter irony, "be perverted into weapons of unimaginable destruction." Marcus set the ship's autopilot and turned to face them fully. "Genesis has been using you to make weapons." "Project Metamorphosis," Solara whispered, her skin cycling through shades of gray and black at the memory. "Director Voss discovered that our abilities could be channeled through quantum matrices. Instead of healing, we were forced to create plagues that could rewrite the genetic code of entire populations. Instead of nurturing growth, we crafted viruses that could dissolve matter itself." Nyx moved to the viewport, staring out at the starfield. "For 3 years, we were prisoners in their orbital research station. Every day, they would extract samples of our biofluid, study our cellular structure, force us to demonstrate our abilities on test subjects." Test subjects. Marcus felt his stomach turn. Volunteers, they called them. Nyx's reflection in the viewport showed eyes filled with ancient pain. Political prisoners, debtors, anyone whose disappearance wouldn't be noticed. We were made to ... reshape them, turn them into living weapons, mindless drones, or worse. Solara joined her sister at the window. "We escaped during a prisoner transport, but not before we learned the true scope of their plan. Voss has collected dozens of ancient beings like use reality shapers, consciousness weavers, time benders. He intends to use our combined essence to power a device that can transfer consciousness across vast distances. Consciousness transfer." Marcus puzzled over the implications. Like digital immortality? More than that, Nyx turned back to him. "Imagine being able to plant your mind in any body, any form, anywhere in the galaxy. The ultimate conquest, not just of territory or resources, but of existence itself. Genesis could literally become anyone, everyone," proximity alarm chimed. Softly from the cockpit, Marcus quickly checked the sensors and cursed under his breath. "Company's coming. 3 ships moving fast, definitely military." The sisters exchanged a look that spoke of shared experiences and unspoken communication. "It's Agent Kira Storm," Solara said with certainty. "Voss's enforcer. She has cybernetic implants that let her track biosignatures across incredible distances." "Can she track you specifically?" "They injected us with quantum tracers before we escaped," Nyx explained as she moved toward the ship's small cargo bay. "The signal is weak but persistent. Eventually she will find us no matter where we run." Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. What if we remove the tracers? Impossible. They're integrated into our cellular matrix. Remove them, and we die. Solara's skin had shifted to deep crimson, the color of determination mixed with desperation. But there is another way. She placed her hands on a pile of raw materials Marcus kept for ship repairs, metals, polymers, quantum crystals. Her fingers began to glow, and the materials started flowing together like living clay. Within minutes, she had crafted 3 devices that looked like a cross between jewelry and advanced technology. Bioscramblers, she explained, handing one to Marcus and keeping 2 for herself and Nyx. They won't hide us from Storm, but they'll mask which of us is which. If she's tracking multiple identical signals, she won't know who to target first, Marcus finished, understanding immediately. He clipped the device to his jacket and felt a strange tingling sensation as it activated. Clever. Your father would have been proud, Nyx said quietly. He helped design these during the early days of the underground network. Thomas Vale was a good man. Marcus stared at her. Knew my father? He saved 17 of our kind before Genesis finally caught up with him, Solara replied. Your decision to help us was not coincidence, Marcus. It was destiny fulfilling itself. The ship shuddered as energy beams struck the outer hull. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the sleek, predatory forms of Genesis interceptors closing. At their head, flew a ship unlike anything he'd ever seen, black as void, its hull seeming to bend light around itself. Storm's flagship, the Nightfall, Nyx identified grimly. She's never failed to bring in a target. There's always a first time, Marcus said, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. Hold on. We're about to find out if your improvements too. My ship actually work. As the wandering star dove toward the nearest asteroid field with 3 Genesis ships in hot pursuit, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what his father would think of his son following in his footsteps. Probably something about how the universe had a twisted sense of humor. Behind them, Storm's voice crackled over the comm system, cold and mechanical. Surrender the specimens, traitor. Your interference ends now. Marcus's response was to push the engines beyond their safety limits and plunge deeper into the swirling maze of space debris. The hunt was far from over. The asteroid field known as the Bone Garden had claimed more ships than any other hazard in the Zarian system. Massive chunks of crystallized metal drifted in chaotic orbits, their surfaces crackling with residual energy from some ancient catastrophe. It was exactly the kind of place smart pilots avoided and desperate ones used as a last resort. Marcus Vale had never felt more desperate in his life. The wandering star wove between floating mountains of twisted debris, its enhanced hull sparked. Blue-white as Nyx's bioarchitecture deflected impacts that should have torn the ship apart. Behind them, Agent Storm's interceptors followed with mechanical precision. Their weapons painting targeting lasers across the asteroids, their Solara pointed toward a massive, hollow asteroid that looked like a metal skull. It's structured, it's not natural. Someone built a facility inside. Abandoned mining operation, Marcus identified, checking his navigation database. Been dark for 20 years. Perfect place too. An energy beam sliced past the cockpit, close enough to leave after images in his vision. Storm's flagship had flanked them, using the asteroid field's gravitational currents to close the distance with impossible speed. She's too good, Marcus muttered, wrestling with the controls as another salvo forced him into a desperate spiral between 2 colliding asteroids. We need help. As if summoned by his words, a new ship appeared from the asteroid's shadow, heavily modified. Gunship bristling with weapons that definitely weren't standard civilian equipment. Its hull bore the scars of countless battles, and the kind of retrofitting that spoke of someone who knew how to fight. Marcus, you magnificent bastard. The voice over the comm was warm with humor and seasoned by decades of hard living. Still finding trouble in all the wrong places, I see. Jackson. Marcus couldn't believe what he was seeing. Jackson Grimm, what the hell are you doing out here? Saving your sorry hide, apparently. The gunship Reaper's edge dove toward Storm's formation with weapons blazing, though I have to say picking a fight with Genesis is ambitious even for you. Jackson Grimm had been many things over the years. Bounty hunter, smuggler, occasionally legitimate security contractor. What he'd always been was one of the finest pilots in known space, and Marcus's closest friend since they'd served together in the Merchant Marine 15 years ago. If anyone could even the odds against Genesis, it was Jox. 2 specimens and a civilian accomplice, Storm's mechanical voice cut through their reunion. Surrender now, and your deaths will be efficient. Lady, you have no idea who you're threatening. Jackson's reply was accompanied by a missile barrage that sent one of the interceptors tumbling into an asteroid. But you're about to find out. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. Storm's remaining ships were faster and better armed. But Jackson fought with the desperate fury of someone who had everything to lose. Meanwhile, Marcus guided his ship through the asteroid field toward the abandoned mining facility, hoping to find shelter long enough to come up with a plan. They docked at a maintenance airlock just as Jackson's ship limped in behind them, trailing atmosphere and sparks. The bounty hunter emerged from his battered vessel wearing a grin that was equal parts relief and adrenaline high. "Fun," he said, embracing Marcus with the enthusiasm of someone who just cheated death. "Mind telling me why Genesis wants your passengers badly enough to send Storm herself?" Nix and Solara stepped forward, their skin shifting to neutral tones as they evaluated this new addition to their group. "You are Jackson Grimm," Nix stated. "Your reputation precedes you." "All bad, I hope." Jackson's humor faded as he got a good look at them. "Holy stars, you're Prism-born? I thought your kind was extinct," nearly Solara replied. "Genesis has been very thorough in their collection efforts." "Collection?" Jackson's expression darkened. "This is about Project Metamorphosis, isn't it?" He saw their surprised reactions and nodded grimly. "I've been tracking Genesis operations for 3 months now. Started when they put a bounty on a consciousness weaver I'd been hired to protect. Poor bastard had the ability to link minds across galactic distances." "What happened to him?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know. "Storm happened to him," Jackson spat. "By the time I found his holding cell, there wasn't enough left to identify. But I managed to steal some data files during my escape." He pulled out a quantum storage device. "Genesis has been collecting reality alterers for 2 years. Time benders, matter shapers, probability weavers, anyone who can manipulate the fundamental forces of existence. For the Consciousness Transfer Project," Nix said with growing understanding. "They need multiple types of quantum manipulation to make it work across interstellar distances." The facility's emergency lighting flickered on as their presence triggered automated systems. Through the transparisteel windows, they could see Storm's ship positioning itself at the facility's main entrance. While smaller craft moved to block all other exits, "We're trapped," Marcus observed. Worse than that, Solara was examining readouts from wall-mounted displays that were coming online. "This isn't just a mining facility. Look at these power readings. This place is still active." Deep within, the asteroid, something massive, was humming to life. The crystalline structures embedded in the walls began to glow with the same prismatic light that emanated from the sisters' skin. Ancient machinery, dormant for decades, responded to their presence. "What is this place?" Jackson asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "A progenitor site," Nix breathed, wonder and terror mixing in her voice. "Our ancestors built this. We've awakened something that was meant to stay sleeping." The asteroid shuddered as Storm's forces began their assault on the facility's outer defenses. But inside, something far older and more dangerous was stirring. Something that would change the balance of power in ways none of them could imagine. "Well," Marcus said, checking his weapon and preparing for whatever came next, "I always wondered what it would be like to make history. Looks like I'm about to find out." Outside, Storm's voice echoed through the facility's comm system. "You cannot hide forever. Genesis always collects what belongs to us." But as the progenitor technology continued to awaken around them, Marcus began to wonder if they'd all stumbled into something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. The escape from the progenitor facility had been nothing short of miraculous. As the ancient machinery fully awakened, it had created a quantum displacement field that scattered Storms attacking ships across 3 star systems. In the chaos, Marcus, Jackson, and the sisters had fled in the Reaper's Edge, leaving behind the wandering star and any hope of maintaining a low profile. Now, 3 days later, they drifted in the shadow of an unremarkable asteroid in the void belt, waiting for a signal that might never come. There, Jackson pointed at a barely visible pulse of light from a nearby asteroid. "Captain Phoenix's beacon. Took her long enough," The star dancer materialized from what had appeared to be empty space, its adaptive camouflage hull shifting from the mottled gray of asteroid rock to the deep blue of military-grade armor. It was a beautiful ship, sleek, deadly, and carrying scars that spoke of countless battles against impossible odds. Captain Zara Phoenix met them at the airlock, her silver hair pulled back in a practical braid and her eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much and saved too few. Behind her stood a diverse group of beings that Marcus recognized as the kind of refugees most civilized worlds pretended didn't exist. "Jackson tells me you're carrying precious cargo," Zara said. Without preamble, her gaze fixed on Nyx and Solara, Prism-born sisters who've escaped from Genesis. "That true?" "It is," Nyx replied, her skin shifting to respectful blues and golds. "We are grateful for sanctuary, Captain Phoenix." "Don't be grateful yet." Zara led them through corridors lined with jury-rigged equipment and emergency patches. Sanctuaries. In short supply these days? Genesis has been hitting our safe houses across 3 sectors. We've lost contact with half our cells. They entered the ship's main meeting room, where a holographic display showed the tactical situation across known space. Red markers indicated Genesis facilities, while scattered blue dots marked resistant strongholds, and there weren't nearly enough blue dots. "How bad is it?" Jackson asked. "See for yourself." A new voice spoke from the corner, where an elderly man with intricate tattoos covering his arms was studying quantum calculations that floated in the air around him. Elder Thane Zara introduced him. Last keeper of progenitor knowledge this side of the galactic core. Thane gestured, and the display changed to show a timeline of disappearances. 57 confirmed captures in the past 6 months. Reality shapers, consciousness weavers, probability manipulators, anyone with quantum-level abilities. Genesis is accelerating their collection schedule. They're preparing for the final phase, Solara realized with growing horror. The mass consciousness transfer? Mass transfer? A woman with cybernetic implants covering half her face looked up from a bank of computers. "That's Myra Cross, our tech specialist," Zara explained. "Myra, show them what you've found." Holograms shifted to display Genesis's orbital facility. Above their capital world, a massive ring structure that pulsed with ominous energy. 3 weeks ago, this thing was just a research station, Mira said. Now it's drawing power equivalent to a small star. Whatever they're building up there, it's almost ready. The metamorphosis engine, Thane identified grimly. "I've seen the theoretical designs. It can transfer consciousness across galactic distances, but it needs massive amounts of quantum energy to function. Energy they're getting from captured beings like us," Nyx said, her skin cycling through angry reds and oranges. "How many people are they planning to transfer? Based on power requirements?" Myra's calculations were chilling. Everyone in the Genesis corporate hierarchy, thousands of minds uploaded to perfect immortal bodies, will seed themselves across every major world, taking over governments, military organizations, economic systems, ultimate conquest without firing a shot. "Unless we stop them," Zara said firmly. "Which brings us to why you're here. Elder Thane believes the Prism-born might be the key to shutting down their operation permanently." Thane approached the sisters, his expression mixing hope and desperation. "Your people created safeguards, didn't they? Ways to prevent their technology from being misused?" "Yes," Solara admitted reluctantly. "But activating them requires 3 Prism-born working in perfect harmony. There were dozens of us when the protocols were established. There are dozens of you now," Jackson pointed out. "Genesis has been collecting reality shapers for months. They're all being held in that orbital facility. Facility protected by reality warping defensive systems," Mira added. "Powered by the very beings we're trying to rescue. It's the perfect trap. Then we spring it," Marcus said, surprising everyone, including himself. "We go in, free the prisoners, and let the sisters activate their safeguards." "Suicide mission." Zara shook her head. "That facility has enough firepower to slag a battle fleet. Not if we use this." Thane activated another hologram showing technical specifications for a device that hurt to look at. "A quantum resonance disruptor. It can temporarily sever The connection between the Genesis systems and their power sources? Temporarily, how temporary? Jackson asked. 17 minutes. Maybe 20 if we're lucky. Not enough time for a full assault, Zara mused, but maybe enough for a surgical strike. Small team, specific objectives. I'll go, Marcus volunteered. It's my fault they're in this mess. We'll all go, Nick said firmly. This ends with us, one way or another. 8. An alarm began blaring throughout the ship. Mira's hands flew over her controls as tactical displays lit up with incoming threats. Genesis fleet, bearing 2-7 mark. For 3 battle cruisers and a full escort squadron. Storm found us, Solara whispered. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the familiar predatory silhouettes of Genesis warships dropping out of hyperspace. At their head, the nightfall gleamed, like a blade made of crystallized shadow. All hands to battle stations. Zara's voice carried throughout the ship. This is not a drill. Wait, Thane said urgently. The disruptor isn't ready. We need more time too. There is no more time, Nix interrupted. She and Solara moved to the ship's largest viewport, their skin beginning to glow with increasing intensity. But there is another way. What are you doing? Marcus demanded. What we were created to do, Solara replied. Protect life, even at the cost of our own. Their combined energies reached out beyond the ship, touching the quantum fields that held the asteroid belt together. Space itself began to twist and flow around them, reality bending like heated metal. They're creating a quantum storm, Thane breathed in amazement. It'll scatter the Genesis fleet across half the sector, and kill them in the process, Jackson realized. The human body can't channel that much energy. Then we'd better make it count, Nick said, her form beginning to blur as she pushed beyond her physical limits. As the sisters poured their life force into reshaping local space-time, Marcus finally understood what his father had died trying to protect. Not just individual lives, but the very concept of freedom itself. The right to exist without being consumed by someone else's ambition. The Genesis fleet scattered like leaves in a hurricane, but the price was almost too high to bear. When the quantum storm finally subsided, Nix and Solara collapsed, their prismatic skin flickering like dying stars. We have to get them to the medical bay, Marcus said, but Elder Thane was already shaking his head. They've used too much of their life force. But they've bought us something precious time to prepare for the final battle. As the Stardancer jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward their destiny at the Genesis orbital facility, Marcus held the sisters' hands and made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep, that their sacrifice would mean something. Behind them, the quantum storm they'd created continued to rage, a testament to the power of those willing to give everything for the chance to remain free. The Genesis orbital facility loomed before them like a metallic cancer wrapped around a dying star. The Metamorphosis engine's ring structure pulsed with stolen quantum energy, each heartbeat representing another reality shaper being drained of their life force. Marcus Vale pressed his palm against the shuttle's viewport and tried not to think about the dozens of beings suffering inside that technological nightmare. Quantum Disruptor is armed and ready, Mira Cross reported from the pilot's seat. Her cybernetic implants glowed as she interfaced directly with their modified shuttle systems. One shot, 17 minutes of disruption, then we're on our own. In the shuttle's medical bay, Nix and Solara lay connected to life support systems that Elder Thane had cobbled together from progenitor technology and desperate hope. Their prismatic skin barely flickered now, their quantum signatures so faint that Marcus had to strain to detect them. They're dying, he said to Captain Zara Phoenix, who stood vigil beside their unconscious forms. They're transforming, she corrected him. According to Thane, the Prism-born don't die the way other species do. Their consciousness merges with the quantum field itself. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you understand what we're really trying to accomplish here. Zara's silver hair caught the facility's ominous glow as she turned to face him. We're not just trying to rescue prisoners or shut down Genesis. We're trying to fundamentally change how consciousness and reality interact. Through the shuttle's walls, Marcus could feel the metamorphosis engine's power building towards some terrible crescendo. Director Voss had been busy during their absence. The facility now bristled with reality-warping defensive systems that made conventional assault impossible. Disruptor firing in 3.2.1. Mira pulled the trigger. The quantum pulse struck the facility's central hub with the force of a concentrated star. For 17 precious minutes, every Genesis system would be running on backup power while their primary quantum sources were severed. It was the only window they would get. Go, go, go. Jackson Grimm's voice crackled over the cum as his strike. Team launched from the start answer. While Marcus led the rescue mission, Jox would be fighting his way to the facility's control center to prevent Voss from activating the consciousness transfer protocol. Marcus's team himself, Zara, and a handful of resistance fighters docked at a maintenance airlock while the facility's defenses flickered and died. Inside, the corridors were lined with containment cells that hummed with barely contained quantum energy. Each cell held a being whose very existence could reshape reality. 63 confirmed prisoners, Zara reported, her scanner painting. Targets throughout the facility. They're all being held in the central ring directly below the metamorphosis engine. They fought their way through corridors filled with Genesis soldiers, their weapons cutting through opposition that would have been impossible to overcome under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. They were the last desperate moments of a conflict that had been building for decades. In the detention center, Marcus found horrors that would haunt his dreams forever. Reality shapers, strapped to devices that slowly drain their quantum essence. Consciousness weavers, locked in sensory deprivation chambers. Time benders trapped in temporal loops that aged them decades in minutes. Free them all, he ordered his team, every last one. But as they released the prisoners, Marcus realized many were too far gone to help. Their quantum signatures had been drained to the point where their consciousness was barely holding together. They would need immediate medical attention just to survive the next few hours. Marcus, Zara's voice carried urgent warning. We've got company. Agent Kira Storm stepped into the detention center like death-given form. Her cybernetic enhancements gleamed in the harsh lighting, and her weapons were already tracking toward the fleeing prisoners. 63 specimens recovered, she announced with mechanical satisfaction, initiating recontainment protocol. The battle was brief and brutal. Storm moved faster than human reflexes could track her augmented body, shrugging off weapons fire that should have dropped a battle tank. But Marcus had learned something important during his time with the sisters. Sometimes the most powerful weapon was the willingness to sacrifice everything for someone else's freedom. He tackled Storm directly, wrapping his arms around her torso and triggering the quantum grenade attached to his belt. The explosion tore through both of them, but Storm's cybernetics absorbed most of the damage while Marcus found himself lying on the floor, bleeding from wounds that should have been fatal. Above him, Nyx knelt with her hands pressed against his chest, her skin blazing with the last of her quantum energy. "You cannot die," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not when we are so close." "Nyx, you need to save your strength." "Our strength is yours now," Solara said, appearing beside her sister. Both Prismborn were pouring their remaining life force into him, and Marcus could feel something fundamental changing in his cellular structure. The progenitors designed us to pass our abilities to worthy successors. "I'm not worthy," Marcus protested. "I'm just a traitor who got in over his head. You are Thomas Vale's son." Nyx smiled as her form began to blur. "And you have proven yourself in ways that matter." The transformation was agonizing and beautiful. Simultaneously, Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, touching quantum fields he'd never known existed. Through new senses, he could perceive the metamorphosis engine's true purpose, not just consciousness transfer, but the complete rewriting of reality itself. The fail-safe protocols, Solara's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You can activate them now, but you must choose quickly." 10 minutes until full system restoration. Mira's voice crackled through his cum. "Whatever you're going to do it now." Marcus stood, his body crackling with prismatic energy that made the air itself shimmer. Around him, The freed prisoners were being evacuated by Zara's team, but he knew they would never make it to safety before Genesis's defenses came back online, unless he did something that had never been attempted before. Jackson, he spoke into his his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the facility's quantum matrix. I need you to overload the metamorphosis engine's power core. That'll destroy the entire facility, Jox protested. That's the idea. At first, I'm going to merge every consciousness in this place with the quantum field itself. Marcus, that's impossible. My father spent his life protecting people like this. Marcus interrupted, his form beginning to blur as Nyx and Solara's had. Time to finish what he started. The process was unlike anything in recorded history. Marcus reached out with his transformed consciousness, touching every mind in the facility, prisoners, resistance fighters, even Genesis soldiers. For one perfect moment, all barriers between individual consciousness dissolved. Through that connection, he activated the progenitor failsafes that had been waiting millennia for someone worthy to trigger them. The metamorphosis engine's quantum matrix inverted, transforming from a tool of enslavement into a beacon of liberation. When Jackson overloaded the power core, the explosion didn't just destroy the facility, it sent a quantum pulse across the entire galaxy. Every Genesis installation, every consciousness transfer device, every tool of digital oppression simply ceased to function. But the most beautiful part was what happened to the consciousness that had been merged during the process. Instead of dying in the explosion, they found themselves distributed throughout the quantum field itself, existing as pure thought and possibility. Marcus Vale, spice trader turned hero, felt his individual identity dissolving into something larger and more wonderful than he had ever imagined. Around him, the sisters' laughter echoed through dimensions he was only beginning to understand. Welcome to the new dawn, Nyx's voice whispered across space and time, where consciousness is finally free. From his ship safely outside the blast, Radius Jackson Grimm watched the facility's destruction paint the cosmos in shades of hope. The Resistance had won, but more importantly, they had fundamentally changed the relationship between mind and matter throughout known space. In the months that followed, reports would come in from across the galaxy. Authoritarian governments found their control systems mysteriously failing. Corporate hegemonies discovered their workers developing impossible skills overnight. Children began demonstrating abilities that defied conventional physics. The age of digital oppression was over. The age of quantum consciousness had begun. And somewhere in the space between thought and reality, Marcus Vale continued his father's work, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves and helping consciousness itself learn what it truly meant to be free.